The human spirit is so resilient. We are back with another reflection on the daily Vedantic. This one, I record this as ash is falling all around our house after returning from evacuation about 2 days ago. I had recorded a handful of episodes and lead up to a trip to India that my wife and I got to the airport and then went back home and did not go on because of the fires here in Los Angeles. I sent out an email to our newsletter that I send each week, every Friday, to the Vedantic Club. You can DM me on Instagram if you'd like to join the newsletter. But at the nudging of Joseph, one of my teachers for Vedanta, he said that we should share this email more widely. And I want to preface before reading the email for today's episode and reflecting on just everything that's happening right now in this interesting time. I want to preface this by saying that this email goes to a philosophically minded group. It's a philosophy club after all. And this is not what I would say to many community members of our daughter's classes. We're one of 3 families that I know of that don't live in the Palisades. So just about 97% of our community has lost their homes. And I'm recording this in our home that is safely standing. So this is not what I would say to someone that just lost their home. This is not what I would say to many people. But this is what I felt like this group and this community within the Vedantic Club could hear. So let's jump right into what I wrote them on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Hello, everyone. Where to begin? Let's begin at the end. Everyone we know is safe. And I'm writing this with the positivity, energy, and clarity that comes from good sleep and an early morning of reflection. A reflection on all of the reminders this week of what existence in this world is like. Temporary, fleeting, and not just subject to change, but change itself. And writing this while observing the contrast between the dense, gigantic fog of smoke continuing to completely obscure the usual coastline view, contrasted with a seemingly untouched, perfect, cloudless blue sky just above it. Both are there, right outside this window, each deriving value from the other. Both are existence. Both are this world. This week has been a powerfully dynamic one. From packing for a trip to India on Tuesday, to then seeing titanic plumes of smoke near our children's school from miles away on the way back from an early morning doctor's appointment. Smoke with the size and density of which I had only seen before in the television images of 9/11. To rushing over and evacuating our daughters and other children from their school amidst catastrophic chaos all around us as if it was out of a cinematic war zone as the Palisades fire started right behind their school. To the confirmation of safety of our friends, community, ourselves, and our home, to helping a friend find their car untouched miraculously by the fires yesterday, to then moments later driving through the wreckage and sending confirmation after confirmation to friends that have been unable to get into the Palisades that their homes were completely gone. The word destroyed doesn't even make sense to use, as the homes were just gone. Like rows and rows and rows of pastries lifted from a baking sheet with little proof that they were ever even there. The highest perspective I keep sharing within our wider community is that the biggest questions, safety of each other, safety of our children, all have the best answers to them, and that the rest can be rebuilt. But this is also clearly the end of a version of Los Angeles, a version of our community, and a version of our lives that we all had in our minds and in our projected futures. And hidden in these ends are countless beginnings, sprouting and taking root in about 10,000 families' minds this morning. The community in this newsletter, a philosophical newsletter, however, allows for the sharing of a slightly amplified perspective. And the honest reflections Cheney and I have had and shared with each other are below. 1. If something can be taken away from you, it's not you. We're not our stuff. We're not our school, our routines, and when those are taken away independent of emotion or attachments, what remains is still whole. 2. Our versions of life in our heads, versions that include linear, constant progression, only ups and no setbacks, illusory versions that do not map to reality, are a choice of delusion rather than seeing clearly what is in front of us in plain sight, that the world is change, constant change. The world is opposites. It always has been, always is, and always will be. Our resilience, like the wind strengthened tree, comes from our exposure to this change. The more change we're exposed to, the more resilient, the stronger we become for ourselves and our communities. That linear progression we seek and project on the outside world is from a call within, an intuition within, that progress is possible, and it is. But that progress is only possible within. Resilience, progress, strength comes from this exposure to change. 3. As Swami Parthasarathi famously says, to expect the worst is to be a pessimist, but to be prepared for the worst, that is philosophy. It does little good to try and practice free throws for the first time just before Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That preparation begins decades before. What are we preparing for today, right now, that is a clear inevitability? Or the alternative, what are the clear inevitabilities we are choosing not to prepare for? Realities that come to knock on our door daily, trying to remind us of what is and what will be, that will one day find us helplessly flat-footed if we ignore these knocks. How radically helpful is our judgment, our vision, and our effort for ourselves and our community if we can see things as they are? How strong and helpful can we be if we are prepared instead of paralyzed? And how light and nimble is life if one can, like Emerson said, identify only with what one can carry with them and no more. It is rare but invaluable when the world reminds you with deafening volume what it is, what it has always been, and what it will always be, what we are and what we are not. And in the illusory contrast before us is the truth. And in the truth, there is freedom. Fire destroys. Fire purifies. There are now reports of loss of life. And again, this is not something that I would say or send to many people, but the audience here for the Daily Vedantic, well, there's no better audience for a philosophical perspective than an audience like this. It's the value of satsang, of community and truth, the pursuit of truth, is that you can have discussions at different levels, that discussions with a colleague, coworker, a friend that's maybe just absolutely walloped by certain things that they can't handle and shouldn't discuss things at certain other perspectives. But I will say, even after sending this, what has become increasingly clear in talking with our friends, I chatted with one of our friends, our closest friends, that I've known for 30 years. And I called him up after texting back and forth for a few days, and finally got through to him. Knew that everything was okay. And I said, Ben, how are y'all doing? And they lost their home and they're staying down south a few miles, and said, how are y'all doing? And he said, James, we're great. We're actually great. We're with family and everybody is safe. A few hours later, another similar conversation with a friend saying, man, so many ups and downs, but this, and this worked out. Conversation about 2 hours ago saying, man, we're just blessed we got out alive and we're with family. And it was a FaceTime with my friend Stu, and went from laughing to crying to laughing. The human spirit is so resilient. And the inevitabilities that show themselves all around us, one of the best things that we can do is to prepare for them years and decades before we are called to act in the face of them. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.